Good morning, Sabah al Khair, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. A warm welcome from KPMG to all of you to this breakfast seminar. We're very glad that you've made it today. We do understand that all of you have a very busy schedule, and we highly appreciate you taking time and effort to join us. Therefore, we'll strive to finish on time in all the event details. My name is Ahmed Tufail, and I'm a partner with KPMG, and I shall be your host for the event. We'll have the event starting off with a keynote address by Mr. Khalid Ansari, partner in charge, KPMG Oman, and we'll have two panel discussion, an interactive panel discussion with the very esteemed members of the industry. To give you a context of the discussion we'll have today, as you all are aware, the importance of a finance function in any business in supporting to take the better decisions, which just not ensures the financial prudence and compliance, but also support the CEO in formulating the business strategy and roadmap for the future. And I would like to pause there for a second because that's the key message which the CEO are sending across for the CFO, to partner with them. At the same time, with the challenging times ahead, the declining oil prices, and the impact on the economy, it's equally critical for the CFOs in the region to lead the way and strive to create a leaner, faster, and more efficient finance function. This will form the basis of our discussion today. The first panel discussion will discuss how the CFOs can contribute to navigate through these crises that we have. At the end of this, we'll also have a break, followed by our second panel, where the panelists will discuss the role of the finance function as a business partner. Before we start the discussion, I would like to take this opportunity to ask Mr. Khalid Ansari to share his thoughts about current conditions and the emerging role of finance function in today's environment. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. Thank you all of you for coming. Let me get straight on to the discussion points and set the scene. As business leaders today, we all see these are the headlines in front of us. There are regional area issues, tensions, Omanization, Vision 2020, falling oil prices. We are surrounded by exciting news and challenging news. And that's what life is all about. If there's no challenge, there's no excitement. So we're all working, operating in a very dynamic environment surrounded by events which are moving very fast, some in our control, some not in our control. So as business leaders, as CFOs and CEOs, what are the challenges you feel? I think that's the topic today. We want to hear from the respected leaders of the community. If you look at the oil price trend, okay, up and down, if you track it from 1974 or whatever, there has been some ups and downs for a number of reasons. This is not the first time that the oil prices has taken a hit. So, and normally what happens as business people, whenever there is a sudden change in oil price, we have a knee-jerk reaction. And rightly so, because the Oman economy is predominantly oil-based economy. So obviously, when the biggest earner takes a hit, there is a tendency to have a knee-jerk reaction. But if you track the oil prices over the years, this is not the first time. The worst crisis, happened in 1986. I remember when I came to Oman, 10 days later, there was oil dropped from $40 to $8, devaluation. There was a challenge. That's the first challenge the economy faced. And the economy got out of it. At that time, people were saying oil, 10 years, 15 years maximum. Holiday's over, or the, party's over. It's not. We're 30 years down the road. Still, if you look at the GDP today, Oman GDP is a different dynamics. The size is much bigger. The economy is much bigger. So each time there is a dip, the geopolitical, the economic reasons have been different. This year also, when the oil prices started coming down, there are differences, reasons. Now what goes down has to come up. So as CEO today, as CFOs, the challenge is how do we react to this? dynamic situation. And effectively, it's the companies, that ride with the change through intelligent, proactive measures survive. I can share with you 2 or 3 without going into the names, based on our KPMG's experience over the last 30 years or 40 years. In '86, when the oil prices dropped, there were leaders in the industries, in construction, in services, in oil sector, in banking, who are no longer there today. Those names have disappeared. But there are people who have survived and have come up much bigger. And the reason those companies survived and are today bigger companies, coronal stock market, bigger banks, is because they did something different. They took on the challenge, looked at the challenge ahead, and said, let's find a solution. The normal knee-jerk reaction is that, okay, let's cut cost. From a CFO's perspective, the first, easy one is let's cut cost. Now, cutting cost is not the only way. And when people start thinking of cutting costs, the first thing which comes to mind is let's cut staff. That's the easiest thing. But we believe that that's not the most optimum way. I think staff, for example, is a resource. There were companies I can share with you. There was one client of ours who had, it was a large group back in '80s. The business was totally dependent on oil. Serviced, the bulk of the revenue came from oil. When it hit them, they went back to the drawing board and said, look, let's redefine our core. Let's redefine our strategy. We've got 1,000 people. What do we do with them? All trained. Can we get into other sectors? And today, without naming them, I think some of you may be sitting here may will recognize, today is a leading group today, and totally different from what it was 30 years ago. That's an example of a company which took decisions and retained. And I remember the managing director of the company saying, look, I'm going to retrain everybody in my organization, re-equip them with new skill sets, and be ready when the upturn comes. I'll take advantage of that. And the upturn did come, and they were foremost in the development. So challenges are there, and as CEOs and CFOs, today we're looking at what are the options, and hopefully by sharing knowledge, we'll be able to help our companies. Let me just share with you the recent survey which was done, and what is CEO's view of the CFO? Okay? What do CEOs think about CFOs, their CFOs, and what do they expect out of them? And that's an interesting feedback I'll share with you and leave it for you to debate as we go along. 58% of the respondents, it was a survey done, it was a global survey done by KPMG, 58% of the people, of the CEOs, want support on performance and growth. They want the CFO to help them in performance and growth. 12% are saying we want governance is our focus. We want, make sure governance is good. 11% are looking at efficiencies and values. 10% are looking at control. And 9% of the people are looking at innovation. It's an interesting perspective. This is what CEOs want out of the CFOs. Performance and growth. That's the biggest item on the agenda. Now, if you look at from CEO's perspective, most value-adding personal attributes of a CFO, they're saying 49% they want that the CFO should look at the big picture, not just balance the books, not just balance sheet, make sure they're the balance, okay? Bigger picture, and get involved in the strategic approach, because CEOs need support of the finance to help them think ahead and develop the strategy. Without the support of the CFOs, they cannot do. So it's a very large, almost 49% on that. The other attributes they're looking at are the leadership qualities. So CFOs should have the leadership qualities to drive the business. And 26%, they say we want attention to detail. Okay? Ability to execute, 20%. Ability to deal with shareholders, analysts, 22%. And openness to innovation. Now it's interesting, innovation is there, but it's not. So what the CEOs want, CEOs want to do innovation. They want to lead the innovation, but they need big support from the CFOs. Okay? So that's the perspective we are operating in today. And this is what is in the mind of the CFO of today. I think we ran out of the page to put the challenges in there. Yeah? So that's in the mind. So CFO is thinking everything under the sun. What do I do with it? Yeah? Where do I go from here? Yeah? Interesting time, challenging time, but challenge creates opportunity, and opportunity creates good business sense. So today, ladies and gentlemen, the learned panel will help the CFOs, navigate through the mental cobweb. With that, I thank you very much. Have a good day, and thank you, all of you.
Thank you very much, Khalid. And I think I will keep this slide in the background during the first panel discussion. Our first panel of the day has eminent personalities from the different fields who will discuss the implication of the challenging oil price scenario on the finance function and what the finance function can do to navigate through these challenging times. Due to the limitation of time, we will actually allow 2 questions to be asked from the audience. And may I request you, if you can write down your question during the moderation and pass it on to the KPMG team, who will hand it over to the moderator, and we'll answer the question as much as we can. Obviously, we'll follow this by a break, which will allow you to interact with the panelists to ask more questions. I will now invite our first panel to take their seats on the stage. We have on the panel Haifa Al-Khaifi. She is the finance director at PDO, and she has spent more than 20 years in the oil industry and has various senior level positions within PDO, Shell International in Oman and across the globe. And she's an active member of the advisory board at Sultan Qaboos University. Thank you very much, Haifa. I'd like to call on Janab Muhammad Ali Al-Saeed. Janab Saeed is the president and group CEO of IBD Group and VEC. He has founded a number of successful ventures in Oman, which are part of the IBD Group. He's a founding member and a board member of the Entrepreneur Organization Network Oman chapter. Thank you very much for coming, Janab. Thank you. Call up on the floor Mr. Hamid Hamrani. Mr. Hamid is the economist and entrepreneur. He advises the Ministry of Finance on important matters, including the Sovereign Wealth Fund, various investment companies, and the National Airline of Oman. He is a known writer and writes on global economy, and his opinions and views are recognized globally. Thank you very much, Hamid, for coming. I'd like to call on Andrew Long. Andrew is the country CEO at HSBC Bank Oman. He's a career HSBC banker and has been with the group for over 30 years, serving key positions in Hong Kong, Australia, US, and UK. Thank you very much, Andrew, for coming. I'd like to invite Majid Atuqi. Majid is a resident managing partner at Trowse and Hamblins. Majid specializes in corporate and commercial laws. He's a board member of the CMA in Oman and a founding member of OPAL, which is, as all of you know, a society formed by the companies engaged in the oil and gas sector in Oman. And he's also an acknowledged leader in the field of corporate and commercial matters. Thank you, Majid, for coming. Finally, I'll call up our moderator, Ritesh Mangla. Ritesh is a KPMG director, and he has experience over 15 years across industries, consulting major organizations over the globe, and has led many finance transformation initiatives. He will be our moderator for discussion. A very warm welcome for all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahmed, and good morning to everyone. I think the keynote from Khalid actually addressed today's focus on the macroeconomic situation of Oman. while with the falling prices, with the falling oil prices, financial slowdown, the cash liquidity issues, and the volatile market conditions, there is an increasing pressure which is building up on the finance function and the organizations at large. These are challenging times. That's what Khalid, in fact, also referred to in his presentation. And the companies with robust operating model, management practices, and business models have been able to scrape through this. And this creates an opportunity. The way we look at it is the glass is actually half full. And if this is half full, that creates an opportunity for people to look for ways and means to look at how things can be optimized. That's the way to look at it. And I think that's something which we'll be talking about in the panel now. Before I open up the discussion with the panel, I think it will be prudent to take a viewpoint from the audience here on what they think about the response of the finance function should be in the present scenario. So the way we will do it is we will have a question coming up on the screen with some options there, and I'll take you through with it as to how can you respond to that particular question. While they set it up, you might see a token on your table like this one for your responses. It has a few numbers on it. The response is obviously anonymous. It doesn't carry your name for sure. You have to just press firmly on the option which you want to choose on. You can choose as many options as you want within the 10 seconds time when the ticker is running. The last option is something, or the last choice is what gets registered. One vote is something which will get registered, and then when we do it, just please place it on the table, because we will be using this on a regular basis within the panel discussion also. Just to make you comfortable, so that the usage is understood by everybody, I'm just putting up a sample question there. How are you feeling this morning? I think the ticker is going to come up. That's where it starts. It's on the 6 seconds, and it's time for you to respond. So that's the response, and that's the kind of response which you will see on our questions also. All right, let's move to the question. So again, as I said, your vote counts. The question is, in these challenging times, what in your opinion should be the most prominent role of finance function to play in adding value or contributing to the business? Is it adapting austerity measures by rationalizing discretionary expenses? Is it establishing deeper engagements with the business to identify areas where potential cost savings can materialize? Or is it relooking or reassessing the operating model of finance function, whether centralization, decentralization, or any other model? Or applying the concepts of Lean or Six Sigma to optimize the cost of finance function? So that's the question which we need to get an answer on. Can I request the ticker to start off now? Time to respond. Last 3 seconds. Oh, great. It's pretty interesting. So I think the majority, close to 80% of the audience here, has actually chosen the second option, which is establishing deeper engagements with the business to identify areas with potential cost saving. And I think this is fantastic, because this is actually in line with the theme of the discussion also, which is great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the responses. And I think this is good time for us to start off the discussion with this one. With this, let me quickly start off with you, Janab Syed. How do you see this as an opportunity for improving existing systems or processes in your organization, and what kind of strategic initiatives or tactical movements have been happening in your organization to take care or to deal with these the stakeholders' concerns? Can I get your views, please?
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here and share some of my learnings through the journey of entrepreneurship and the CEO seat. Straight to the answer to your question and my perspective, I would think the most important thing for any organization is data. You need data to make sound assessment and sound decision. So should you have systems that can give you sufficient data, then you can see whether it's an opportunity or risk or threat. So in my organization, we built our own engine, which is called Intelgate. The Intelgate is our one baby IP that is like an ERP. So it is an integrated system that managed to get the data from HR, finance, business development, as well as the performance. And now in the performance, it's very important to have every single hour of the person, where does it go and how effective it is, and is there a return of that investment of the hour. So the opportunity that we see at these times is to really test our system. Did it work, or is it working? And is there an area we can tweak it? Now, in terms of strategic direction, the strategic direction is survival. For an organization that of our size, we don't have reserve cash that we can go acquisition. Although, funny enough, outside Oman, there are some acquisition we can acquire, you can take without paying money. That's an interesting aspect, which I realized that we could do that. So this situation, strategy as an organization, is to do two things. One is to keep the house robust within the system that we have. At the same time, look for an opportunity that can materialize just for us being in the right place at the right time. Thank you.
Perfect. Great. That's a great viewpoint. In fact, we talked about various things in terms of the cash, in terms of the innovation, in terms of the variety of things to be happening there. With this, I think that kind of leads me to the question to Haifa. What, in your view, are the things and the initiatives which are happening at PDO? It would be good to hear your viewpoints, and also if you could shed some light on the initiatives which are happening at PDO.
Certainly. It's a pity with respect to the poll that there wasn't all of the above, because I might have chosen that option personally. So PDO is playing a very pivotal role in the economy at the moment, because of course we contribute some 75% to the economy directly. And the way that we're doing it is we do have a portfolio of projects that are extremely lucrative, notwithstanding the prevailing oil prices. And the strategy that we've taken from a long-term perspective is that we are very much staying the course towards our target of producing 600,000 barrels of oil per day by 2019. So what we've done essentially is a mix between enhancing production and therefore revenue generation, and then also the cost optimization sort of opportunities that were linked in your poll. If I can just give a few examples of each. So when it comes to production, some of the things that we're doing are really staying the course with respect to the hydrocarbon-related projects. We're not touching any hydrocarbon-related projects at this time. They're being executed as normal. But we're also taking opportunities to do early monetization of developments. We're also doing a lot of resource planning by looking at rigs and optimizing on any white space that we have on rigs. So bottom line is, whichever way we can to enhance production and therefore complement revenue generation, that is something that we're certainly doing. From a cost optimization perspective, there's several things that we have embarked upon. I'm not going to talk about austerity because I think there's such a negative connotation with that word, and it almost sounds short-termist. And I don't think we should be short-termist in this kind of environment. One of the things that we do are the contracts optimization reviews, which is something that has been developed by a company called Anklasaria. We work hand in hand with our contractor community in a 4-day style workshop, whereby we try to extract as much value as we can from contracts by challenging things like standards, specifications, but without cannibalizing on the contractor's margins.
Sure.
The other thing that we're doing is the Lean program. We embarked on the Lean program about 6 years ago, and it's really starting to bear fruit. It's something that we're seeing having a really bottom line impact. So irrespective of what the oil price is, the Lean organization is delivering. If I may give a few examples on Lean.
Sure, and in fact, that also leads me to the fact of the question in terms of saying, if you could talk about from a finance perspective,
Sure.
being a finance director, What are the specific initiatives and the other things which are happening in your area that are much more relevant in the current context? I think that would also be very useful to the audience here.
Certainly, certainly. So from a lean perspective, of course, my remit as a CFO extends to contracting and procurement as well. One of the things that we've done was looked at the permit to work system. So before contractors can embark on any work, they need to wait for a permit. But they were waiting for 90 minutes, and we're paying standby rates as they sit there and wait. It's a waste of time, and it's a waste of money as well. By employing lean techniques, we're able to streamline that process down from 90 minutes to 10. That's one example. Another one is with respect to the consumption of chemicals on rigs. We managed to reduce that consumption level by 40%, which is quite astronomical actually on a bottom line basis, just by looking at the different dosages, different recipes, as well as different opportunities with respect to alternative chemicals that might be used. So we've done that. We've also used this crisis, so never waste a crisis, to capitalize on more of a cost-conscious culture and embedded that within the organization. We embarked on the SAVE campaign, the Every Real Counts campaign, which means that every single individual that works for PDO is empowered and accountable for every real that they're spending. The last thing that I wanted to mention, but also in the context of KPMG, is the importance to have an external lens on your organization. And for that, I encourage companies to do a lot of benchmarking. So we've done the ZIF benchmark, which looks at operating cost models across different fields within the region and like organizations. But the one that also excites me is the Hackett benchmark, which we did, because our aim is to be world-class by 2020. And they looked at us from a perspective of efficiency and effectiveness. And of course, we're not there yet. There are massive gaps that we need to close. And we've identified a roadmap in order to close those gaps based upon certain priorities. To cut a long story short, one of the things that they recommended was actually to restructure. So to have a centralized finance operations section whereby we can streamline activities, standardize, replicate following waste elimination. This is where KPMG actually played a key role with us. You are our strategic partners, I would like to think, from the perspective of assisting us to go through the transformation process into setting up the finance operations section. I hope I've answered your question.
Thanks a lot,
Unless you want
Haitham.
more examples in terms of lean within finance.
Sure, I think I'll park that for the time being. I'll come back to those.
Sure.
I think this is good enough.
Certainly.
Thank you so much. All right. Now, before I move forward, I think it would be interesting to take a different perspective and a different viewpoint from an economist like Hamid. Hamid, specific viewpoints or specific guidances or things which would be of very relevance to the CFOs or the finance community in the current environment?
First of all, I'd like to thank KPMG to organizing this. I think it's a phenomenal sort of opportunity for us to learn from the CFOs as well. I was also a CFO not very long ago, so I relate to the profession quite sort of, well, I hope. Look, in terms of where we are on economy, I can't sort of endorse more what Khalid started with. I think it is a phenomenally challenging and dynamic time. As far as the government is concerned, we are sort of seeing it as an opportunity for private sector to come in. Our sort of fiscal deficit management really is going to be focusing on three broad areas. One is energy reforms. If you really look at it in terms of, and that's really, if you look at it in terms of IMF reports and recent IMF reports and World Bank, they talk about that in GCC, we spend sort of like 8% of the GDP on energy. Whereas if you look in the developed world, we are talking about less than 1%. In Oman, in 2013, it was 6%. So if you really look at it, there is a humongous scope of us to have energy reforms there. And the energy reform can be in many ways. I mean, there was a Chatham House report just recently released. They did some work for Saudi Arabia. They are talking about that the energy efficient electrical equipments, if we were to bring in to the efficiency standards, we are talking about 18% optimization of per barrel use to produce the energy. So the opportunity cost, if you add to that, you're talking about at least 5% of the GDP. So if you look at it in terms of Oman GDP of $80 billion, I'll leave you to 5% and you can calculate. So it's not, there are areas where we can have, sort of a pretty good sort of rationalization of fiscal deficit without really impacting or substantially impacting the slowdown. The second area is cost. Now, if you really look at it in cost, the base metal prices and the food prices are phenomenally down. Base metal prices are roughly around 30 or 30+%. And food prices are about 17% down. These are Bloomberg consensus indexes, so you can verify that. Now, if you really look at it, our development expenditure in terms of, if you're talking about billions, so if we were to even get sort of 15 or 10% sort of thing, and I think PDO is a very great example, which they have taken that on board, which Haifa was talking about with cost optimization ratio, sort of thing, a contract optimization review and low oil price reviews. So really, I mean, it is possible. So that's the cost. Then in terms of cost rationalization, of course, there will be, sort of non-essential projects can be looked at it. But at the moment, it's all under discussion. So there's the second part is cost. And really, the third part is, opportunities to earn revenue, non-oil revenues. And again, there is a phenomenal scope. And this, we see it as a kind of a distribution of wealth exercise. So there are opportunities at the moment that we are talking, we are going through this sort of, what you call discussion processes. And once it is finalized, you will see some measures being announced. But I just want to end my sort of economic sort of analysis, which I think Khalid touched it beautifully when he was talking about 1981 to 85, when we were having low oil prices. Guys, we did not have the human resources talent that Janab mentioned a little bit ago. We didn't have the counter-cyclical, if I just can bore you with some economic terminology, counter-cyclical buffers, which we have today. And, just look at, so we are in a much better position today than we were in 1980s. And Khalid said that we survived, and it's not just Khalid said, it's documented, that we survived that, okay? And finally, I'll just go back to look at it in terms of Singapore. In 1965, when Singapore came, they had nothing. They didn't even have natural resources. We, alhamdulillah, have natural resources. We got a lot of minerals. We got a lot of still oil there. And they became one of the leading economies. And they didn't even have the HR talents. The immigrant community there didn't even have shared values. We have, mashallah, everybody ingrained here for quite I personally, I've been here for 15, 16 years. So I think we can do it.
Yep, great. Thank you so much, Ahmed, for such an insightful package of economics coming up in 2-3 minutes. I think that's the best which we can get from Hamid. Thank you so much. I think now I would want to take another different viewpoint from a lawyer. Majid, in your opinion, are there any changes? Because Hamid did talk about reforms. There were some views being talked about reforms. But in your opinion, are there any changes required in the legislations to help organizations to implement any improvement initiatives or navigate through these challenging times?
Obviously, there will be a lot of stuff that are going on.
Oh, I'm sure.
On the background, things that we don't see or we can hear and speculate about new legislations. But before I answer your question, I would say that I could see from the audience and the room that there's an intended positivity that should come out of this debate, if I would call it. And I would want to take an opposite view and be a bit controversial and be perhaps a little bit pessimistic. So I would summarize my statement by saying no credit, no job, no problem. And that maybe summarizes it all. If we're living in a prolonged economic downturn like this, there will be casualties. There will be casualties in terms of people or companies that would not obtain new contracts. companies will have difficulties with cash flow and difficulties with credit. And the first thing, as we said, is to do certain things which will be around the austerity measures. Yes, it's pessimistic, but that is the reality of the situation we're living in. So what would I like to see in terms of legislation? I would like to see that there is a boost in terms of legislation that allow easy credit to small and medium enterprises. That is something that has been talked on for a long period of time. There is an authority, there are things that are being done, but more should be done on that score. And I know that on the oil and gas sector, there is an ICV initiative, a lot has already been done, but with the current situation, I think we need to fast track those initiatives. Right. The other thing that I would like to see, and again, it's something that is been talked about, but again, it should be fast-tracked, is the fact that there needs to be a sort of an encouragement in terms of the culture of paying on time. And imagine if all of us could just pay each other on time.
That's
including, and I would say openly, including some of the authorities. The government itself should try its best to pay on time.
Right.
That will have a positive impact on the economy, a positive impact on the cash flow of companies that are struggling to do what they've been committed to do under their respective contracts. And this is something that I've been talking about for a long period of time. And I think now it's high time that we work on that.
Great.
There are countries that have legislated fast-track payments. And with that, I would like to see, for instance, in a fast-track adjudication system,
right,
where if you have an approved invoice, somebody's not paying, I could go to the court and not to have to wait for 3 years to get a judgment. It's the debt is admitted. I should be able to go somewhere and get an order to enforce my right. And I think that is important in this current circumstances. The other important thing to summarize is the fact that we're living in an economic model that accepts the upturns and the downturns, and we need to legislate for both, not just the upturns, but also the downturns.
Right.
So things like bankruptcy laws should be boosted. Things like redundancy. Employees should have a safety net that they can rely on when they are laid off. We know that you can call it shareholders' greed or shareholders' right to take the money out of the companies. But it's from the legal point of view, we would say, why should I be responsible for employees if I'm not making money?
Yep.
So somebody should be responsible. There's an argument that I'm not paying tax and therefore morally I should be responsible. But at the end of the day, companies are there to make money, to make profit. True. And if they're not able to, then somebody should,
absolutely,
there should be a system somewhere to accommodate that effect. That's a summary of what
Thank you so much, Ahmed. I know I've not been fair to a lawyer to just give 3 minutes to summarize, but because of the time paucity, I had to stop you here. That's a very good viewpoint from you. You talked about, interestingly, about the credit part of it. Now with that, now let me move to the banker. Andrew, with the access to the capital being expensive and the pressures on the costs, what are some of the innovative funding options in these times which the organizations and the government can actually look for?
Well, thank you, KPMG, for organizing today. Bankers are not always everyone's best friends, but we try to be. The discussions we're having with government are actually the same sorts of discussions we're having with companies. And with government, we're saying, if you're going to be lending to the government for funding, the investors and the lenders are going to be looking at what the government is doing with revenues, what it's doing with costs and subsidies, what it's going to do with their reserves, what it's going to do on the borrowing side. And in the same way with a company, if anyone is going to be lending to companies, they want to see action taken on all those parts, and we don't see enough action in many cases. as we come into a recession, more people fail at the end of a recession than at the beginning, and we're already seeing failures. So lenders are going to be looking at the CFOs and saying, what are you doing to help manage your companies on the revenue side and the cost side? So are you doing anything imaginative in terms of monetizing your reserves? And your reserves might be oil and gas reserves, they might be contracts in the rail industry, they might be passenger flows in the ports and ferries and airports. There's a lot of ways you can monetize your reserves into structured finance propositions that maybe you haven't thought about. And on the working capital side, what we're finding is that treasurers and CFOs too often think simply about the money that's coming in and out of their accounts, and they're not thinking about the data that is attached to those accounts. And we heard earlier the importance of data. Data from a proper cash management solution will allow CFOs to manage the credit risk of their customers. They can manage the payment record on their suppliers. They can keep a much closer eye on the flow of money across their balance sheets, which too often we find is not even considered. And then the other thing, just very conscious of time, is that money has been very cheap and easy over the last few years. It will not be as cheap, nor will it be as easy in the coming months. We're already finding in HSBC that we can reprice assets upwards. Pricing has come off the bottom, and you will find that the cost of borrowing is going up. And so we're encouraging people to think more long term. And even if a company has cash reserves today, they should be thinking about locking in some funding for the future, because your short-term and your longer-term borrowing needs are going to differ, and they will become more stressed in the coming 12 months. And so having those longer-term discussions rather than being short-term focused is extremely important. If you've got contracts coming through from some major players who are good names, you can discount those contracts, the flows of payments coming through that. And too often people haven't thought about that sort of thing. They're saying, PDO is going to pay me, so I don't need to worry about it. Well, there's a funding option behind that if you wish to. So having intelligent discussions with your relationship managers is a way of actually finding alternative sources of finance that perhaps you haven't considered in the past. Very quick, and I'm happy to answer questions later.
Thank you, Andrew. I think interestingly, Andrew talked about the funding costs, and I think linking it up from the funding cost to the cost of finance, of what finance can do to add value to the business. Now let's talk about the lean finance. In another global CFO of what we did in KPMG, what we found out was 50% of the CFOs actually feel that they are already skilled at embedding lean finance principles and capabilities in their day-to-day operations. And with that, let me kind of come back to the audience now. Let me take a view from this group on how important is lean to their organization. There's another question which is coming up on the screen, and the question is, are lean and other process excellence initiatives part of our organization's agenda? Option A is, it is part of the strategic agenda to be covered over the next 3 to 5 years. It's part of the next year's annual operating plan. It's an ongoing activity. It's already embedded as part of the year's annual operating plans, and it's not actually in focus. And I think let the ticker start, and you have 10 seconds to respond. Interestingly, so it's only 22% are the people saying it's part of their strategic agenda, and nearly more than 50% saying it's an ongoing initiative as part of their year's annual operating plan. So it's in the DNA. It's a fantastic view. That's very good viewpoint. Thank you so much for the response. And with that, let me move on to Haifa. Lean as a concept is something which has its roots in manufacturing. But we've heard about lean. So how do you think lean improvements in finance function can actually bolster the bottom line of an organization or can add value to the business?
Thank you. Excellent question, actually. I also had a misconception about lean from the perspective of, indeed, it did originate from a manufacturing type industry, Toyota type industry. And I was pleasantly surprised because sometime last year, I went on a Shingo Institute tour to North America to visit a varying number of companies, 10 companies, as a matter of fact, in different sectors. So it included pharmaceuticals, healthcare, hospitals, aerospace, manufacturers of airbags. And these companies were in different, different places in their journey towards lean. So some of them were 6 years into the lean journey, others were approximately 20, 25 years into the lean journey. And what really got me was even those companies that had been in the lean journey for 25 years or so still had room for continuous improvement. What also got me in those companies was that there was a uniformity of terminology, irrespective of whom I was talking to, whether it was the president of the organization or a janitor working within that particular company. The terminology was uniform. For us in PDO, we started the lean journey about 6 years ago. It has become part and parcel of our DNA. It's essentially a part and parcel of our culture. And to answer your question more specifically, is it applicable within the finance function? Absolutely, because lean is essentially about streamlining. It's about optimization. It's about waste elimination. It's about standardization and replication. And I have quite a few examples where it's had a bottom line impact that is quantifiable. For instance, with respect to spare parts management, we used a lean approach to ensure that whenever we have a shutdown of a facility, the spares that are required are there just in time. Well, what's the bottom line impact of that? It means there's no deferment of oil. And each barrel costs, what's the oil price today? Please tell me we're approaching 50. So it has a bottom line impact from a revenue perspective. The other example I have is the time it takes to approve contracts. We used to have minor contracts that are up to $250,000 each. And it took about 300 days to put these contracts together. And you don't need that much time. So through lean, as well as a streamlining process, we managed to get it down to only 30 days. Is there still room for improvement? Absolutely, because that's the concept of lean. Okay. I have a few other examples which include, for instance, the finance operations section.
Right.
We've recently restructured. I think other companies are better known as shared service companies, shared services centers. So we have a finance operations center, again aided by KPMG. And the objective in that center, using lean approach and all these streamlining techniques, is to get 30 to 40% efficiencies within the space of 5 years. It sounds like quite a significant amount of efficiencies, 40% in establishment, but I know it's doable because it has been done in different organizations, and we've had best practices from KPMG that have been shared with us. So 40% over a 5-year period is absolutely doable. The last thing I wanted to add, if I may, with respect to lean, sure, is that because we've seen the bottom line results and they are quantifiable, we've now had a pull from government organizations in order to do joint lean projects. So we're working together with Ministry of Finance on joint lean projects, with the Ministry of Oil and Gas, with MECA, so Ministry of Economic and Climatic Affairs, but also state audit. And that is extremely reassuring for me, because then there's actually joint win-win situations across the government boundaries.
Great. Thank you so much.
Can I just give an example?
Sure.
Just to reinforce that. I mean, HSBC were in the finance business, clearly. Haifa mentioned shared service centers. We have over 30,000 staff offshore in India, China, and Malaysia in operating in shared service centers for the HSBC group. And they are tasked every year with reducing their costs and improving their productivity by 10% a year, every year, and have done for the last 12 years now. So they can only do that with lean and other techniques, and that is what we're adopting in a payments processing, a banking operations processing environment. So absolutely support what Haifa has been saying.
Great, thanks. I think those are very valid points, but I just wanted to bring to the attention of the audience here as well to the last option here in terms of the 14% saying not in focus. I think it might be worth looking at it and thinking of it in a different fashion. That's a pretty significant number of people saying not in focus. Okay. With this, I'm again coming back to you, Haifa. You talked about the lean as a concept and the applicability of it into in the finance function. Now, in the difficult times like these ones, getting an approval done for funding or for financing or running these kind of initiatives, because these initiatives cost money. It's in these challenging times, how do you convince or how do you get a buy-in for these kind of approvals to run these initiatives? And what are the challenges which you face?
So actually, Ritesh, I beg to differ because, again, I want to reiterate that within PDO, we started this journey 6 years ago. We didn't start the journey because the oil price is $30, $40, $50. It is something that we started when the oil price was in excess of $100. And we knew that it was going to be a long journey, it was going to be a slow journey. So we think of it as something that is a way of life. It's in our culture, it's in our DNA. We don't view it as an initiative. It's just part and parcel of everyday business. And again, if you were to come to PDO and speak to anybody at any level within the organization, the terminology is uniform. We're working towards a common goal. Our true north is our 600,000 barrels per day of oil by 2019. That is what we're focused on. We have our motto, which is fueling Oman's economy. And we look at processes from a streamlining perspective to ensure that each and every individual is empowered and can make a bottom line impact. So no, we don't look at it as funding an additional initiative. And one thing that has helped is actually the tone from the top. Not just the managing director, but uniformly across the executive committee, middle-level management, supervisors. Every day we look at lean opportunities. Every day we do Gemba walks, which is essentially we go down to the coalface, and it's about servant leadership. So at the coalface, we respect those guys as the experts in that area. We coach for performance. They come up with the solutions. We only intervene where necessary. But it is not an initiative on top of everything else.
Great.
It's a culture.
Great. Thank you, Haifa. All right, that leads me to another thing to think of, is the fact that any kind of these process improvements journey is nothing but a large amount of change management. And in our recent survey, in another survey, what we figured out was 2 out of 3 organizations actually rate resistance from people for the changes as the biggest challenge which they face as part of these initiatives. Now let me come back to you, Majid. I know you wear 2 hats, one of being a lawyer and second of being a representative at OPAL. So what do you think are the challenges for the oil producing companies, and how these oil producing companies or all such other companies dealing with this kind of a challenge of change management?
Obviously, I mean, it depends. You're talking to your existing, the board and the people, the decision makers and so forth. At the moment, we're living in a panic situation, and everybody's, whoever's, people will hesitate to buy or even sell, if I could put it simply. So the challenge for any CEO, management, or the people that are putting proposals to their respective boards is how to convince the board to make decisions. And we see people reverting to lawyers and consultants to ask as many questions as possible to help them to, arrive at a decision that they would think that is suitable. So there is a little bit of resistance as usual to come up with an acceptable change that will suit the current circumstances.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. I'll just request Janab Sayed, if you can give your views from a CEO's perspective. Just 30 seconds. I know we are running out of time. Somebody's pointing out flags to me on the back. So I'm just running out of time. Just 30 seconds from a CEO's perspective.
Who's got a stopwatch? Okay, at the board level, we were split on the cutting cost, all right? And whether we should go 10% cut across the board, or we pick few people and cut them the cost. As I said, the board was split. So we went down and involved everyone. We just explained to every single person in a group of 12, and told them this is the situation we are facing. What is it that you can do as a voluntary? We are expecting 15%, whatever you can, we'll appreciate. To my surprise, even the PROs have chipped in something. So the message is involvement. Involve everyone from the PRO, VP, about the challenge ahead of us, and prepare ourselves to survive.
Great. Thank you, Janab Syed. I think we are running out of time, so the questions which you would have in your mind, if you would have noted them, maybe I would request if you could utilize the time during the networking for getting your answers to those questions. Unfortunately, we can't get those questions on the panel because of the paucity of time. With that, I think it's been a very interesting discussion. Thank you all. Thank you to the panelists. And with this, I hand it back to Amit.
Thank you very much. It's been a very insightful discussion, and I think you'll agree with the panelists that efficiency has always been an important ideology for business to follow. It's become more imperative today with the increasing pressure on revenues and volatile market, and I hope that this is something that's worth pondering by the CFOs. We are also pleased today that we are also launching KPMG's CFO advisory practice, and globally KPMG works with the clients on their finance strategy, finance operation, decision support requirements, and we do offer solutions like finance function operating model design. And more importantly, to the 14% who haven't considered lean finance, and working capital management, costing, and various management reporting frameworks, amongst others. We will actually be breaking for our networking break for the next 30 minutes. Please let us know within KPMG how we can support you in this process. And I would appreciate if you are back on time. And ladies and gentlemen, please join us for the coffee in the room next to the hall. Thank you very much. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Have you enjoyed the networking break? During the break, we left on your table 4 documents of KPMG. The one obviously is an important document for us is the feedback form. And on the back of it, actually, there's these few areas which we thought this could be a thought-provoking questions to you, which you can actually read through. It's at the back of your feedback form. And it says what areas are the pain points for you in your present role. And request you to take some time, answer those questions, and then we help us to identify the right conversation to have with you and our team will be in touch with you. Also, we've left with you 3 specialized service lines important for the time currently in front of us. One is working capital management. You can see it is available. There was a showcase of case studies on the monitors to allow you to see where we've added value. It's a very important service line if people are interested in, so let us know if you'd like to take through that. Planning, budgeting, forecasting, again a very important tool for you. We'll provide you with experts who can assist you in that process to ensure that you have very waterproof planning, budgeting, forecasting process. And finally, the most important one is the finance transformation. We've heard it from Aitha and Rajesh about the journey we've been through. And I encourage all of you to take a step back and look at your finance function and see how you can transform it. It's not something which only the large entities like KPMG, it's even the smaller companies themselves to see that there is something which can be done to increase efficiency. So please talk to us about it if you require any services. Now, you've also received requests for questions, and due to the limitation of time, we'll take in the first panel conclusion. What we decided is that we'll start immediately with the second panel discussion. I mean, if you can continue noting down your question, and towards the end of the event, we'll have 10 minutes for a question across all the topics discussed, and the moderator will decide which questions will be answered by which panelists. Right. Good. So we'll start with the second panel discussion. The aim of the discussion is to deliberate on effective finance function through the role of partnering with business. And that's an important description of it, is to partner with business, is to move from a back office function to really be in the front office and work closely with the CEO. So I'll start off introducing the panel members. We'll start off Dr. Amar Rawaz. Dr. Amar Rawaz is the CEO of Muscat Oil and gas technology group. He's had very senior leadership positions, notably as the CEO of Mantel, and won many awards and honors for his visionary leadership. Dr. Awas is also passionate on education and served in various academic and leadership positions within STU. Thank you very much, Amran. I'd like to call Amran Mahboubi. Amran is the technical director at BDO and has spent 3 decades at BDO, including 5 years in Shell International as a senior economist. He has held various leadership positions in petroleum engineering, operation, and corporate planning functions. Thank you, Amran. Call up Amr Jabri. Amr Jabri is the head of finance and general manager of finance of Muscat company. Amr has had various leadership positions, including finance director of Oman Trading International (OTI). From experience in the oil and gas sector by virtue of prior role in Abu Dhabi Gas Exploration Company in Abu Dhabi and Oman. Thank you. I'd like to request Shaykh to come back again. Thank you, Shaykh. As you know, I'm back for video. Thank you very much. And our moderator, Latin Kini. Latin is partner with KPMG, the CFO Advisory Services, and spent 16 years of experience advising clients in high growth, low growth, difficult times. Nathan will be our moderator for this panel. And a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone, and thank you for being patient. That I think some of the questions remain to be answered. So I'll be conscious about finishing this a few minutes earlier than desired, so that we have space for questions. Well, I mean, one of the reasons, somebody was asking me, so why is it that I didn't moderate the previous panel? And I said, the way I look, I definitely don't, I can't profess lean, so. so with that, I think, as a finance community, we always want a chair on the table. We believe that we can actually provide a degree of visibility and for making better informed decisions, and being able to help business guide through difficult times. And to that, I always wonder, how will we get that space on the table? And to that, Dr. Awas.
First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. I was feeling a stranger. I was somewhat comforted by the fact that Majid was here. So there's someone else who is not a CFO or a finance person. Now, I want to recollect a course that I went for. I was just counting the years. It was 11 years ago with Jack Welch. And he says, in growth, you have 2 partners. Your CFO and your chief people officer. He called it your HR guy, the Americans. So he says your finance guy and your HR guy. These are your 2 partners. One is very important at the beginning because he tells you, he says you might think you're the CEO, you'll think of what, your role is to think of what to do. And your CFO is the one who'll tell you whether you can do it or not. It's not your board, it's your CFO. He'll tell you whether you can do it or not. And then your VP HR or Chief People Officer would actually help you survive after you do the merger or acquisition, because then you have to deal with all those people, new people that you just acquired. So you come right at the beginning. I think my experience at the telecom is a witness to that. Talal, who's now the CEO of Mantel, must be a pride for the CFOs, to see someone move from a director of finance to financial controller to CFO and then to CEO. But he went through the journey. He was always on that table with, when we started going public, first of all, the first transformation was going from a public authority into a company. That was not easy. And then from a company to a public company, a stock company. And then dealing with competition, then splitting. We split the 2, we split actually before going public. So splitting, again, finance was a leader there. And then going public, and then merging again. And then dealing with more and more competition up to 8. So the role of finance have always, in my opinion, been central. And, I always seek their opinion to understand my environment, my numbers, my abilities to move forward with innovative ideas, with sometimes crazy, brave ideas that now people see as success, but then we and others saw them as crazy steps. But I had the finance support on it that, yes, we can do it. So going back to Jack Welch's comment, it's your CFO who will tell you whether you can do it or not. And then everyone else in the organization will help on the how. So I think you do have a central role. You need to be a partner in the business. You need, as a CFO, to understand the business. You need to spend more time with the other custodians of running the business verticals and work with them to understand their day-to-day concerns, their day-to-day aspirations, and then that way you actually earn the discussion on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abbas. Amran, one of the things, as a growing up, in the growing up years of being a finance professional, one of the things always comes to me is we are always taught to be adversarial, in a sense that, just like he said, can you do it, can you not do it? So, talking business partnering is slightly, in that sense, a graduation from being adversarial to being partners. So how do you see this? How does one go about building that trust? How do you see, is it there? What needs to be done?
My experience hasn't been on the adversarial. Maybe it's because where I work, it's a pretty low-end finance business. It's high-tech. It's a give me the money and I'll give you the oil approach. But the answer I would give to this, for me, it goes back to the first one. It's what I tell everybody, actually. If you want to be close to the business, if you want to be business partnering, wherever you're coming from, you've actually got to attend the business. And then you've got to set your priorities right. I think if the financing get to the table, they need to stop just talking to finance people. Right? That's a little bit what we talked about. You said you've got to get out there. And I think you've got to set, that's why I tell all my colleagues, it's not just the finance people, so you've got to set your priorities right. And one of the things I have specifically done this year was Haifa talked about contract optimization reviews. And I've been championing these for a year. But then I realized I didn't know what they were. And so I changed my diary so that that's what I'm going to do. And I think I've invested something like 15 hours. There isn't a closeout to one of these things when I'm not present. Now, I don't think, and I'm not being critical of my colleagues, but I don't think my colleagues have taken that to heart, that actually stop doing business with each other, start doing business with business, which in this case, the most remarkable thing was that I was now not only just spending 15 or 16 hours doing optimization reviews, I was spending 15 or 16 hours talking with contractors who have the best ideas. And what I could do is walk away and make sure those ideas get implemented. So to get on the table, you've actually got to get out your desk and be with the business.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it's as simple as that.
Thank you. So I think bring this to a juncture. Getting a little bit from the audience. Trying to figure out. So what, in our opinion, as a finance community, is the most important area to focus on to help? Us as a community to grow in stature as business partners. Can we have the question up? So let me run quickly through the options. First is, like he said, aligning finance planning and strategy. So for whatever strategy wants to do, where is the money? Or is there money in the plan? Transforming data into intelligence. So which means as people who work with numbers quite pretty much in depth, what are some of the things that we can do? Do we think that is what is important, of delivering insight? Leveraging IT to gain agility and speed. Do we have an appreciation as finance of technologies and what can help us enable this business partnering role? Or is it more, given the environment, we should not forget role of conserving cash, cost cutting, streamlining, etc. Is it finance and so we don't have all of the above because I want to leveraging risk management. I mean, trying to do what if analysis, scenarios. I mean, trying to figure out. I mean, are you going to land in the right place? And talent management. I mean, so I think let's go and take the vote now, and then maybe we can get a response from the panel. Wow. So I think significant focus on the first two, and I think given that I want a reaction from the panel, and Haifa, let's start with you. I mean, achieving alignment between finance planning and strategy as the method of getting to being better business partners, and then I also want to, I mean, then go across all four of you. I mean, trying to get a response on.
Sure, certainly. So what I can say is I've worked in the oil and gas sector for 20 years, and again, I won't make mention to the gray hairs on the head. But that is an incredibly long time, and during this time period, I've seen the role of the CFO actually evolve. So gone are the times when our business counterparts, the technical counterparts, have been looking at us, strictly speaking, just to do the bookkeeping or the reconciliations or the historical financial sort of analysis. Of course, some of that is required from a statutory perspective, it's required for other reasons as well. What our technical counterparts want, and especially I can speak on behalf of the oil and gas industry, are strategic partners. They want somebody who understands the business intimately. I sit on the executive committee, and when you do have an outsider coming in, they actually don't know what my background is. They couldn't tell if I'm a finance person, am I logistics, am I a petroleum engineer, because the terminology that we use is interchangeable. I have to do joint management inspection visits of rigs, of facilities, including high-risk facilities, whereby, in order to exit, you have to wear certain breathing apparatus. We're trained in asset integrity, process safety management. So I speak the language, and they want someone who will speak the language and understand the challenges that the businesses are experiencing. I think what our counterparts also require are more preemptive style analysis, what if analysis, scenario analysis, understanding the risks, forward-looking, so that we can help cultivate the strategy and amend the roadmap as and when required. We act almost as in-house consultants. Of course, we're conscious of the business. That doesn't go away because we do have the statutory requirements and so on. But also we play a major part around the table in terms of adding value to that discussion, whether it's in terms of optimization or other means. By the way, and also talent management of our own staff to equip them with the correct toolkit to ensure that when they do get a seat on the table, they can contribute at an adequate level.
And from a business view, Dr. Ravas and Amran, I'll take a quick reaction immediately thereafter from you as well. Have we as a finance community got it right? I mean, Dr. Ravas, we'll start with you. Is this the type of activities? I mean, is the priority right? I heard Amir say all of the above, but the audience seems to have given highest marks to the first two. From business, how do you see this? I mean, is this?
I think they got the priorities right. I mean, as a software engineer, I'm happy that they said 3 is fine, because that means we've done our job. This is why I moved into a different industry. So it's not a priority anymore. Our job is completed there. I'm happy to see that, honestly, and I'm very happy to see that you're focused on number 1, because not only at good times, at bad times, this is more of a priority for you to be part of the strategic thinking. And I'm not so happy about number 5, if I may try and create a debate here. I think, enterprise risk management is, finance function is a central function for this and a central driver for this. So that's my comment on the rating. I was hoping that we will have a debate amongst us, but I really like the term doing business with business.
Yeah.
And the term doing, we are the internal consultants. Trying to put that, finance was always the internal consultants. I used to have, you've been our auditor for a while, I used to have private sessions with my CFO to just learn about the health of the organization and the risks that the organization may or face. And then meet the COO, who is really the heart of the business. And sometimes meet with the two together. And they were my nominees to be the CEO next. Because I can see that through those meetings, without the others, with 7 VPs, without the others, we meet just to bridge and align the two functions. And I have found that finance always gives the information about the health of the organization, and that's a consulting kind of, normally you get a consultant to tell you that. Amran.
Amran, from your perspective again, I also want a quick response on what Dr. Rawaz said on the risk part. And that in the first one is so closely linked, isn't it? Trying to make sure that we have money to build capability to manage all the risks that we've taken either contractually or what the environment is, pushing on to us. So do you see that the priorities here are right? Do you want to reset the expectations a little bit, shake it up?
By nature of any question that has all 6 answers right, you're going to get at this kind of. I don't actually have a problem with the way it's ranked. I think on risk management, we in PDO very much focus on technical risks. We don't. It's not that we don't have the financial risk, but it's actually it's a different business model that we work. So when we sit and talk, and we do have a quarterly review of our risk matrix, we often have arguments about the value of the exercise, because we map it. And we sometimes say, well, we're just going through the motions of mapping something. Well, shouldn't be talking about what we're going to do about it rather than actually describing the risk. So it's actually quite a lively debate, and I sit on one corner and Haifa sits, I can assure you, very, very far corner. But in terms of the order there, I think of PDO today and PDO, let's say 5 years ago, 6 years ago. 5 or 6 years ago, for PDO, corporate planning, delivering on the strategy was very simple. Just do everything we had. It's as simple as that. Anything that we had in the books, we did, and there just wasn't enough of it. Today is very different. Today, actually, we've got more than we can do. So those items 1 and 2, making sure they've got the right data set to make sure that we're able to select, and right now actually deselect and reprioritize, which is happening right today, has been very important. So I don't have a problem with the order there at all.
Perfect.
And risk, it's interesting.
So now
it's a good game too.
I'm going to try and put Amir here into a little bit of a spot. He said all of the above, and not that it's wrong, but I want, a little quick reaction on which other parts you would have seen coming up, from his priorities perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I think overall, I will not disagree with Dr. Amr. The priorities are set right. Leveraging risk management, for example, is part of the strategy planning. At the end of the day, you will not be able to put your forward plan without taking into consideration the other risks, which Oman at the moment, or even in the sector, oil and gas specifically, with the economic climate at the moment. These are risks probably known about, but perhaps maybe ignored as well. That could happen. I think it's a story that will continue to be always prosperous and flowering. But reality, we should always be prepared, and that's where the CFOs or the CEOs or even the board of directors of the company should drive the strategy formulation for this. And the risk is essential part in this. You cannot ignore it.
Yeah, sure.
It's an interesting debate about risk, really, and it just depends on what level of the organization it sits. In PDO, for instance, we have a different tool where we look at project execution risk. We use a tool called OPEST, and we look at the impact in terms of schedule, in terms of reputation, in terms of cost, in terms of HSC, and it's managed from that perspective. It's actually driven by finance, but with a lot of input from project services and project management. And then essentially what we do is we escalate these risks into a corporate profile. So you may have things on the corporate profile that are indeed technical. So they might, talk about hydrocarbon maturation or corrosion management or, what have you. There'll be others that have to do with contract management. But it's very important, I believe, for finance to be a key driver of that process, because we're the ones who are actually facilitating the discussion around the risk mitigation and ensuring that the residual risk is not going to pose an impact or set back the objectives that we're trying to achieve in the organization.
I mean, very interesting, because I know you're probably ahead of the curve in terms of dealing with this and the risk. So I want a little bit of a comment from you in terms of how, for example, because one is putting an additional activity into finance and saying that, we need to do a risk and we need to be finding the money for achieving all the strategic objectives, adjusting plans for what-if analysis and all that. But the real question, if I may ask on behalf of the audience, is what is that operating model? Do you change any part of finance? How do you find the right org structure to deal with some of these things? Does the operating model undergo a change?
So, it's a vast question. Many organizations are set up differently. When I speak to my colleagues who are CFOs and I ask them, well, what's the scope of your mandate? A lot of them talk about the controller type activities, and they talk about the business partnering type of activities. But in PDO, it is a little bit different, because in addition to controller, we also have contracting and procurement. We have legal that report into us. We have forensics and all the investigations that take place that report into us. We used to have audit reporting into us, and I know that's a no-no, so that it's not, okay, so that's not happening anymore. But it's actually quite a vast remit, which means it equips you with a different skill set to be able to contribute to the business on different levels. So can you repeat your question specifically, other than the actual mandate and remit?
If I were to limit to, for example, the first two priorities that the audience has set, and I would presume that why they have voted this high, both in terms of achieving alignment between financial planning and strategy, and also, delivering insights, using data for intelligence, to drive growth. Now, this is perhaps their priority. Now, to deliver that priority, is there something, how do you carve out within the organization? How do you create capacity? How do you create capability?
Sure. Okay, excellent question. Because, see, I actually don't disagree with the audience in terms of the first two being the key priorities, because I look at the other ones, like leveraging IT to be a key enabler. I look at conserving cash and cost-cutting, streamlining. It's also another enabler. Talent management is definitely an enabler. So the enablers are essentially what kind of IT technology you can use to ensure that we're able to become a strategic partner. Let me give you an example. In PDO, it's quite technologically advanced. From an operational perspective, we have IT, which enables us to monitor from the coast wells that are remote on our concession area. We can see how they're performing, the pressure, the level of production. In fact, we can kill a well remotely. Now, imagine, sorry, I know I'm being a bit technical, but imagine if you can marry that with information that is financial related, but real-time information related to that particular well, and now looking at the consequence of, well, the deferment of oil, and how much is it actually going to cost us if we were ever to revive that well in X period of time. That's the kind of dialogue that my technical counterparts want to have with me, and I need to equip myself and my staff with the talent and the capability and toolkit to be able to have that dialogue.
Right. And Amir, how do you see this? What I want to ask you is, again, from a structures perspective within finance, have you seen, and specifically let me sharpen that question even further, to say, do you see people from business coming into finance or vice versa, or is there, how do I do the structuring so that I'm able to address some of these challenges, questions?
Just to understand, this is from the same organization or
both. Essentially the same organization, because I would imagine that improves appreciation for business, but even same sector, for example.
Very difficult question to answer for one reason. I have inherited a very small team all the time for the past 10 years, probably working in a certain way, which is purely bookkeeping. Yeah? And as the organization now is focusing to grow and change the revenue model and become commercial, this is where now we are stepping in order first to look in-house whether we have the capabilities in the finance department. You have corporate finance to focus on, towards funds, into the economic evaluation, etc. And you got also in the financial accounting, you will have to strengthen the capabilities of the individuals or the employees to capture, talking about $2 or $3 billion worth of projects in the next 5 years, and that requires quite a competency base that has to be increased. Then we look at the ERP system. Now that's where I think we have implemented SAP maybe 2 to 3 years ago, and we have probably not looked at the future growth of the organization. So we go back again to the strategy, whether we would like to grow and what we need to do. The culture of the organization, whether this one or another one, will always confront change. You will have resistance. You will not find everybody supporting that forward look, because everybody is in their comfort zone, and everybody is happy the way they are doing it. But it goes again to the communication from top to down, the support you get from the board, the support you get from the others. Yes, we are enablers. We try our level best. We do try to do restructuring, but sometimes you cannot do it directly. You have to do it indirectly by way of looking into other examples in the sector. To be honest, for example, contracts departments, the way they work, sometimes always as risk averse. They are always protective. They will never try to seek different ways, maybe because of external factors. But I really appreciate hearing today from Haifa that state audit, for example, they're looking to lead. That opens up another dimension, that there is also other public sector, they are looking into best practices maybe, or how to become more efficient, etc. And this is something this really pleases me, because I would really love to see more improvement from that angle. But we try, as we are moving as a commercial, we try to educate people, but that will take substantial time, and the change management by itself. And Haifa, maybe Dr. Amr definitely know about that. Change management is not easy. It takes a lot of time. You need to always have new blood. You need to shuffle, in the roles. In certain cases, process engineering. It's not an easy task. I hope I'm answering.
Can I comment on that? Can I merge this last comment also with what was said earlier about what are the things that they're not listed here, but I'm sure you're all aware of, that can actually get you more engaged with the business, as Amran said. Well, I hope we're not confusing you. Amr plus Amr makes Amran. So that's how we would remember us being finance people, yeah? So Amr plus Amr, Amran, two. In Arabic means two. Okay, so stakeholder management. I think you need to engage the CFO a lot. I know and Amran did qualify that PDO is a different business model. Maybe all other government companies are, but as a public company, my CFO was the main partner in the stakeholder management. We went to London every year to meet our international investors and roadshow. And he was there answering directly, helping me when I get stuck. And here in Oman, when we go to visit the ministries, say those that don't give us permits, he's there to tell them how much money the government is losing by not giving us this 480 permits to build towers or something. Stakeholder management, I think you should get more onto that. And you should get issues that are part of the judgmental process of the organization. For example, I made the mistake of having the KPI measurement as part of the finance function. I know some of you think it's not a mistake, but from our experience, I found that the most heated corporate management team meeting is the one when finance are presenting the KPIs of each unit, and that happens every month. So every month they get to hate the finance people even more. The adversary part. So I actually moved that function away from finance into corporate strategy. And somehow people don't find a way of hating the corporate strategy. But finance then try and give you the solutions, so they become the savior, the one that will justify things, and the ones who will give you the solutions. So the structure, I think, has a lot to do with it, but it all depends on the basic economic model or business model of the organization. You can't just have a structure that fits all. Thank you.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking from a structure perspective. What I'm going to do is, perhaps take a bit of an interjection. Instead of going progressing as per agenda and getting into technology and some other things. I think if Ritesh, are you here? You have questions that you want asked of the panelists. And if there are the first panelists, please feel free to. Interesting. Now, this is going to be a difficult question. I'll have to find out who answers this. Let me ask the question first. And please, I would invite the panelists from the previous panel as well. If you consider the MOF or Ministry of Finance to be the country's finance function, where do you think it is today when compared to finance functions in the private sector? A very controversial question. But yes.
Can you repeat the last part?
I'm going to repeat the whole thing quickly. If you consider the Ministry of Finance to be the country's finance function, where do you think it is today when compared to the finance functions in the private sector?
Ministry of Finance has got a very broad role than a CFO. Ministry of Finance has to be part of the macroprudential policies of the central bank as well. Ministry of Finance has to look at the social objectives as well. Ministry of Finance also has to look at the capability development of the country. So there are many facet roles. What we have done in the last few years is that we have also evolved with the private sector as well as we are doing our responsibilities. What I mean by evolving is basically what we have today structured is we have given sovereign wealth funds an opportunity to have their own funds and therefore be a catalyst in terms of growing, because we do realize that the capacity that we can have in civil service, or with regards to the remunerations that we can pay. So we recognize that, for instance, if we want to attract, forgive me for giving the names, somebody like Nigel to be the CFO of OIF, I can't bring him in my payroll as a civil service. So what we have done is we have recognized, we have created entities where we are able to engage the relevant capacity. So I think in that context, I think MOF is not a conventional CFO, but of course the toolkits we definitely encroach upon, and we are aware of it.
Thank you, Ahmed.
I think they need, if I may,
I can take the risk. I've given up my government job, so I think they need restructuring. You're absolutely right on that. They've taken on so many things, And okay, that would be fine because we were just lobbying for finance to take more role, right? But if they have the right talent, I don't think they have the right talent pool to manage all the things they're managing, including the investment companies. What do we have? Imagine like 72 government companies. That's about 70 to 80% of the economy. And it's managed by a small office. Imagine that all the government boards come back for direction, guidance, and funding sometimes from that small group of people. Now, that ought to be grown to be, I think our Treasury Department is bigger. Malta Tasmania doesn't have that big Treasury Department. My ex-organization had a bigger Treasury Department than that unit that's managing 74 companies. So the role is as good as the people that are doing it. And there's just so many roles for the small talent pool that they have.
Perfect. Dr. Waz, just hang on to that because I'm going to ask you the next question as well. I'll take the liberty, then maybe take a quick response again from Haifa. In the context of group companies, I understand there are a number of group companies operating here. One of the questions that's coming by is, how should the reporting lines work? I mean, and while it's written in a very nicely diplomatic way, I mean, the question that's really being asked is my first allegiance to the boss of the business here with a dotted line to a group CFO somewhere? Or is my allegiance to the group CFO with a dotted line to the boss of the business here? I mean, what works best? I mean, what creates best value and I mean, what's the right thing to do?
That's a tough one. That's tougher than the government one. I think with this one, we do have those problems, by the way. I think it's you need to get the CEO, the group CEO, needs to get the CFO believing in all the business units that they're doing. I have been in several companies where they had groups, and sometimes the group CFO will have a fixed opinion about a certain business and will tend to highlight any little weakness that he can see in that company, and therefore would probably create adversary with the management of that company and get the financial controller or the CFO and the subsidiary in trouble with his boss, because he's the one feeding the information to the group CFO, and that could cause a lot of issues to groups of companies. I think if the group CEO is aware of those challenges, they can be managed because he can read every report in his own way. I think the relation between the CEO of the subsidiary and the group CFO is the crucial one. Mm-hmm. I think the relation of the finance guy below him is less critical. The critical relation is between the subsidiary CEO and the group CFO. That's all I can say.
Understand. The situation you just described there, as you just made the case of firing the CFO.
Right. But you can't say that when they're all, we're a minority here, we're three.
I think the only thing, it's not, the question is not directly applicable to PDO, because as you know, we have a CEO, and then we have the CFO, and then we have various business units that are scattered around the concession geographical area within PDO. What can I say?
You have a technical director.
Who's sitting right next to me. But with that in mind, I think one has to be very transparent. Certain business units, and if they're not operating, it's not a point of allegiance or lack thereof. Transparency is key, and you need to put things on the table, and you put them on the table as they are. At the end of the day, we're not here to make friends, we're here to run a business, and therefore we must be transparent with the performance or lack thereof.
I think this is the right time. Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on this one as well, because I'm probably a member of the biggest group in the room, operating in over 60 countries. I think the question is misframed. I actually think people have to learn to work in a matrix. The old single line of reporting is no longer applicable in most organizations. Even within single companies, there's now multiple reporting and multiple working relationships you need. And my CFO certainly has a technical requirement through to his regional and global CFO, but he has a business requirement to me on the ground here in Oman. He also has a partnership requirement with the heads of the businesses in Oman and the heads of the support service in Oman. If he can't manage that matrix, then he shouldn't be in the job. So that's the way I think you need to understand how to operate in the current world and the developing world. Is the matrix is the way to go, and you need to have good working relationships horizontally, multiply vertically, and downwards as well. And if you can't do that, then you need to change your skill set.
Perfect. Andrew, thank you for that, because my next question, I mean, let's take an audience poll on the next question if you have it ready. Very pertinent at this stage to take this one. What attributes and skills are most beneficial to the CFO? I mean, we as a community, as we try to develop ourselves, so what do we think is the right thing to be a better business partner? I mean, let's try and get a priority on this, building trust. And I think some of this has elements of, I mean, you know, working with different people, trying to, I mean, some parts of what Dr. Ravas said, what Andrew said. So let's get a quick vote on this one, please. Last one is my favorite, and I'm really keen to see. Understanding business, yeah. Perfect. I think trust building, I mean, you know, stronger relationships. I think that's where transparency came in, understanding business and the broader economic context. Any quick reactions from the panel?
I think they're not saying it's important or not important. It's the priority. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think everybody's answering it as the priority.
As the priority, absolutely. And I think that's how I asked.
You've got fine audience. That's the right priority. I agree with it 100%. My view depends on the year. So thank you. I think my view is more about the situation for the CFO. If we're talking about an organization which is, let's say, stable, then and it's not going into transformation, that's fine. Perhaps maybe there is a good balance among them. But if we're talking about transformation, growth, etc., you might want to prioritize more into, for example, the first and the last one. Yeah. Okay. So this is where my view would be. Very good point. It depends on the stage.
Yeah. Should I quickly check if there is any last question? We are practically out of time, so I'm going to wrap it up unless there is one last question. Okay, I think.
I have to thank you for my breakfast. So the only way I can thank you is always I wanted to leave you something, right? Because I'm not finance or anything like that, but I've been asked this question many a time. And I like three-letter acronyms and I like three-letter things. So if you want to be a good business partner, you've got to be AAP. Yeah, you've got to be administering, you've got to be advising, you've got to be protecting. If you can't remember AAP, you need to be an elephant, you need to be a tiger, and you need to be an owl. An elephant to administer, corporate memory, all that data. To be a tiger, indeed to pounce on all the wrongdoings that may be out there, to protect. And the owl, of course, is to advise. Thank you.
Thank you indeed.
Amran, I was told that I need to come up with a punchline. I can't get better than this. Thank you very much. May I request the other panel members, Hamid, Sayyid Majid, I think on, Andrew, for a quick memento that Mr. Khalid Ansari will present. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending this event. I hope you found it useful and insightful. And I thank the panelists again for coming in and joining us. Thank you very much.